and I would like to welcome you to Writers Inspired by the Arts. Um, as we're letting people in here, I just want to let you know about Writers Inspired by the Arts. It's a twice monthly program that I run to introduce people to writers who incorporate other art forms into their writing toolkits, or we could call them your creativity toolkit if you're a fully multi passionate artist, such as Sara is. Um, and today, um, again, we've got Sara Tiberio here. And hi, Sara,
Mhm.
finally here. Um, so I'm going to, I'll tell you a few things about Sara, and then I want to uh, play something for you. So Sara works in three different art forms. She's a poet. Um, she plays the cello and other instruments, but we'll focus on the cello for now. And she's also a photographer and a videographer. Um, and Sara you got your training originally as a photographer, right? That's how you started. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and Sara's most recent projects have evolved around combining her multiple pursuits and her multiple talents. So I am going to play something for you guys so that you can see. Okay, fix this tab. So, Sara, could you just read the intro? Do you see it?
Yeah. It's not coming up on my screen, but I
Oh,
will
wait a
pull.
second. Hang on. Let me, I apologize. 1 second. There we
There we
go.
go. Perfect. Yeah, so I've wanted to do this for a long time, and finally something in me opened, and I was able to create music on the cello and write a poem to go with it. I was not planning to write about the wild horses I visited while living in the desert of Arizona, but that's what came out of this. I would love to hear any feedback about how you feel the music pairs with the poem or your experience of listening to this.
Okay, so now I'm going to attempt to play this.
Hopefully people are hearing it. I'm not hearing it on my end. I know sometimes it filters out the sound.
Hold what?
I know sometimes it filters out the sound. I'm not hearing it on my end. I'm not sure if anybody else can comment in the chat if they're hearing it.
All right, let me see the chat. you guys able to hear the audio? Sara, were you able to hear me ask that question?
I can hear you fine. I just couldn't hear the recording when you were playing the recording.
Okay. I think we might have to skip it for today.
Or we could share it later or tell people where they can find it.
Yeah, let me put the link to that in the chat.
I can speak a little bit to what that piece is. I wrote a song on the cello, and then I wrote a poem to go with it. And it had a very specific feel, and I had to find a poem that felt like it directly resonated. And when I found one about the wild horses in Arizona and the desert, it felt like the music was kind of helping to create a landscape for that poem. And it was the first time I ever actually composed something. While I've explored pairing music and poetry, this was the first time I composed and literally kind of put them together as puzzle pieces. So that's what that was that we were trying to share.
Yeah. I apologize for the tech issues today, but it happens. Hey, Naomi, nice to see you. Um, why don't we, go ahead into our little chat here and we'll see how things play out. Um, Substack Lives can often be surprising with these things, so we just kind of got to roll with the flow. So, Sara, in that piece, Wild Horses, I actually related to it very much because I lived in Arizona for a few years, and I've seen horses, and I love horses. And um, let's talk a little bit about, and you had that beautiful photograph with it. Let's talk about the photography and how you got into it, because that was actually your career choice, right?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I had been doing both photography and writing for most of my life since I was very young. And I actually started out as a creative writing major when I went to school. But halfway through my school degree, I realized that I wanted to go and do something that I may have a slightly better chance of finding a job. I had one professor even tell us in one of our creative writing classes, it's going to be very hard to find a job in poetry. And so I thought, well, I want to still do something in the arts, and photography is my other passion. So I actually transferred to a different school where they had a really good photography program, and I got a degree in photography, and took a while to build a career in it, but I work full-time right now doing photography, product photography, some social media and marketing for a small independent jewelry designer, and I'm very grateful to be doing that as a full-time career.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. It's interesting. I also developed a passion for photography very early on, and considered training in it. I had a friend who was older than me and who was a photographer and trained me in darkroom, etc. But then I decided to become um, well, I was a journalism major at first. I dropped out for a few years, and when I came back, um, I majored in Asian studies, but my minor was creative writing. So 6 degrees of separation, or whatever you want to call it. How do you use the photos now with your work? How do you incorporate those? How does that
Yeah,
work for you?
So, I self-published my first book, and that pairs a lot of my nature photography with my poems, which have a lot of nature imagery. So it's a natural kind of pairing. And my most recent sort of exploration with it has been to create these collages. And each month I come out with a new collage and a poem that goes with that collage. And the idea is it's 4 photos in a collage, and they're supposed to kind of reflect the mood of the month or how I see that month. In October, those photos are gonna look different than the one I put out for August. It's gonna be very different imagery. And so I am also working to create a poem that directly reflects with the photos. And honestly, sometimes the photos come first for that, and sometimes the poem comes first. And it's been a little back and forth with it.
Yeah. Okay. Should I find one now? And
Great. Yeah.
okay, give me a second here. Oh, I did it again without sharing my screen. Okay. All right. I think I have to scroll a little bit. Sorry, Sarah. I was
Yeah.
queued up for the video.
Yeah, there's one there. Compassion.
Okay, click on it and you'll get going.
Yep.
Okay.
So this was my monthly collage for the month of May. And I will read the poem that goes with these photos. A lot of them are kind of have rain and imagery of flowers with raindrops. There you can see it now.
Do
I
you want
pick
me
up
to keep? Do you want
what?
me to keep the images up, or
Yeah, if
okay?
you would, and I'll read the poem. Yep, perfect. I pick up my languid body, a watering can of memories sloshing around, go out to the yard, tipping until they sprinkle out, coating earth in shiny film. The garden shapes slowly, each day a ritual of pouring until stems raise flowers, time capsules opening, delicate vessels offering forgotten parts of the story. How a parched throat didn't know to ask for water, how a clenched hand didn't know to offer, cycle repeating until what grew became enough to open eyes, buds unfolding, jaw releasing, mouth savoring first taste of sun.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
So, can you talk to us about how this one came together?
Yeah, so um I had for this one I'd kind of gotten the first few lines of the poem, and I knew that I already had an element of water. And interestingly enough, I've had a lot of water themes in my poetry right now, and that's actually what I'm working on for my next manuscript. But once I had kind of this visual in my head as I was starting to write the first lines, I actually went out and took a few more photos to go with the collage. And that was the watering can and the raindrops on the monstera leaf. And I had a few already that I wanted to include. And then the process of putting the collage together is a little interesting in that I want all the photos to go together. And that's different than just pairing a poem with one image. So having them all work together to create a general mood, all of the lighting kind of similar, the feel, and I'll kind of move them around until I feel like I have a collage where it all feels uniform and flowing, and that it best serves the imagery of the poem. And then after that, I went through and kind of finished creating the poem and edited that a little bit. And that's pretty much my process with it.
Yeah, I really love this one. I actually haven't read one that I haven't loved, but Um,
Thank you.
and I could see what you mean, the movement um, of the kind of story that you're telling in the poem flows with the collage and as well as the feelings called upon. So quite beautiful.
Thank
Um,
you.
thank you. Okay, I'm going to come back now and stop sharing. Okay. Um, and let's get to music now. Um, well, actually, scrap that. How did you uh, go back to the writing part
Yeah.
and talk to us a little bit about because you are quite an accomplished poet, but you did drop out of that creative writing program, right? And focus on
So
photography.
yeah, so I like I said, I've done both since I was very, very young. I was writing stories, on construction paper as a little kid and had a diary very young and, had a little point and shoot camera. So these were for me just these natural expressions of who I am and a natural way I process the world just from a very young age. They were always with me. And even when I decided to switch to a photography major, I kept a creative writing minor and I kept writing. And I would say the only times where writing for me has taken more of a back burner is when I had to focus on photography more for my career. And there can be something to be said around balancing those things, and where one takes more energy, sometimes you don't have as much energy to devote to the other one, and when one is your career, that has to be a priority, right? So I've had times of kind of doing it less and pursuing it less, but it's been there for me always because it's just such a way I process the world and my experiences. And it's such a natural expression for me of my soul. And it's always been very natural to combine the two. I think because they're such natural expressions for me of who I am. And really, when I released my book that I self published, that's where I started to see even more how they fit together for me. And it was kind of that joy of getting to celebrate both of my passions in one place. So, I ultimately decided not to pursue writing as a career, but it's definitely been very much an important creative practice for me throughout my life.
Beautiful. Okay. Um, and now let's go to the music. And I think maybe it makes more sense for you to first talk about what you're doing with music now, and then we'll talk about how that came about.
Sure. Yeah. So my most recent project is a project where I am combining live string music with poetry performance, and I play the cello. We have a trio, so it's cello, viola, violin. And what we're doing is we're taking mostly composition from musical composers, ranging from classical composers like Bach, Vivaldi, to contemporary composers, more alternative, Sigur Rós, who is an Icelandic composer, and really having a wide blend. And then we are taking poems and pairing them with those musical compositions and performing it live. And it's me performing poetry, and we also are working with some other poets. It's mostly spoken word poetry, so it already has a presence and a rhythm to it. And we're naturally finding how that rhythm works with the songs and pairing them in different ways. Sometimes the poem completely overlays the song. Sometimes the poem starts and bleeds into the song. And it's kind of like creating a big music. Again, I refer to it as a musical landscape for the poetry to kind of come to life in a new way, where now you're hearing it with string music. And so we just had our first ever live performance. We got great feedback that people really enjoyed the pairing of the two. I think because string music is just so beautiful and it's very instrumental. It works well with the poetry. I think I mentioned this to you, Sheri, at one point also, that the cello and string instruments are the closest to the human voice. So that automatically kind of lends itself to spoken word and poetry. So that's that. It's called Poetrio. That's the project. And the other part of that is exploring, for me, more composing pieces to go with poems.
And how does it work? Because there's three of you. Um, does everyone take a part of the poem, or do you orchestrate it, or how does that
Yeah.
go?
Yeah, so we have a couple poets that are just doing poetry over the music, and that helps. For the ones that I'm performing, we will have, some of the other instruments will play while I'm performing, and then I will jump in after the poem and join them, and we'll kind of finish out the song that way. So we're finding different ways to do it. It's very hard to recite poetry and play at the same time. I've not gotten to be able to do that yet. But we're finding kind of different ways to blend it and arrange songs a little bit so that it works to have an element where I can drop out and read a poem and then come back in, or we'll start with a poem and then we'll do the song. And it's kind of cool to have these different ways of where the poem comes in. But yeah, we have, a couple different poets who just have a great presence and a great voice, and they're reading over the music while the three of us are playing as well. So it's kind of a whole production.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but what was I going to say? The hmm, okay. I guess I was thinking for the published poems that are incorporated. Um, how do you know that it's going to be a match for a particular piece of music?
Right now, it's kind of just an intuitive process
The
of
rhythm,
pairing.
the rhythm,
It's
maybe.
just, yeah, I'm looking at both the rhythm and the content of the poem and pairing with songs that I feel fit that. For example, one of our poets has has a poem where he speaks about being at this pier and watching the ships, and has some metaphors to the ships, floating away. And we paired it with a sea shanty song that has that feel that goes with the image of being at a pier, or I've paired another poet has a love poem with Enya's Only Time, a string arrangement of Enya's Only Time. And it just like fits with the emotionality of the poem. So it's a very creative and exploratory project. And it's kind of just, for me, been an intuitive process of feeling out that I feel like these two would fit. And then we'll come together in a rehearsal and actually see, does this work? So far it's been going well, and we've been finding that it's been working out. Sometimes we have to say, okay, maybe that wasn't quite the right one, and find a different one. But so far I've found that they've been pairing really beautifully. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think it's a wonderful project, and it. I think it could inspire you so much more. Like more is going to come out of it.
Yeah.
You're certainly giving a lot into it. Um, and before we talk with the people who are here about how they could try something similar, that's going to be the little gift to you guys is a quickie on how you could incorporate two of these forms into your work. Um, Talk about, if you will, music and how it came into your life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big part of my story. I grew up with music, specifically jazz music, because my father is a jazz musician and music teacher. And so I grew up, going to his jazz concerts and dancing around as a toddler. And then he got me and my brothers all started on piano lessons very young. which, I wasn't grateful for at the time, but I am now. And then in fourth grade, I picked the cello and started with cello lessons and going through school learning cello. And I actually stopped for about 10 years, a little over 10 years. I stopped playing altogether. It wasn't until about 3 years ago that I picked it back up again. And I went back to doing lessons because I wanted to really see what it could be to commit and do lessons as an adult. When you're a kid, you don't have that determination and that ability to practice regularly and all that, So I started taking lessons again. I found a great teacher here in the North Carolina Symphony. And when I started doing those lessons, it kind of brought back to me this love for music that, I had known in my earlier life, but didn't have as much of a connection to until later on. And then I joined an orchestra, a community orchestra, and found, again, the joy of playing with other people. And just found that I have such a greater appreciation for it now as an adult. It takes work. It takes hard work, but and my whole family is very musical. My brother is also a professional jazz musician, and I think, for a little while for me, I felt because I didn't have that just sort of effortless, natural musical talent, like that maybe music wasn't for me. It's for other family members. I do poetry, I do photography. But honestly, when I started picking it up again, and I just, I've always resonated with the cello, again, since very young, just like these other creative passions. I started to realize, this is for me too. This is a big part of who I am. And it's something I've dedicated a lot of time and energy to, working on. And now to be able to pull this element into my creative process with the poems and the other creative things has brought just another layer of joy and passion. And I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to have started young and to be able to pick it up again now and where I am in my life.
Yeah, I think it certainly does help having it in the family. But of course, there are accomplished musicians who didn't have that. But it's kind of nice to be able to see where that was for you.
Yeah.
All right, folks. So one of the things that I love about this project, Writers Inspired by the Arts, is that with each session, we ask our guest speaker to share a creative practice of theirs that you guys can either incorporate into your toolkit, adapt for your toolkit, or maybe it will inspire you to do something related in your own creativity toolkit. So, Sara, what are you going to share with us today?
Yeah, so I wanted to share the process of taking a song, preferably an instrumental song, string music, jazz, ambient music. Those all work really well. But to take a song and then see if that inspires you to write something, or take something you've written and try reading it with the music. Again, because poetry has, or any writing has, a sense of rhythm to it already. Prose does this too. If you read it out loud, you will find that rhythm, right? And to pair it with music. And for me, it doesn't have to be composing. For me, it has been kind of exploring that composing and then seeing what I'm inspired to write. But I think taking any song, because again, it's just an expression of a wordless expression of spirit, right? So it naturally can be inspiring for written word. So I would just encourage a practice of trying that, especially a song that you personally resonate with, and see what that might inspire you to write, and then maybe even try reading it aloud to that piece of music.
Yeah, and if you want to take a little video of yourself doing that, reading or speaking um, while having the music play after you do it, I'd love for you to share that with us. In a couple of days, I'll send out the recap from this session, and you could, in the comments, note if you're going to want to share something. And hopefully I have that functionality in there that allows you to do that. Are there any questions for Sara? And again, we're
sorry inside because it's a little hot, but
I wish I could go outside, but I'm on the 10th floor. Wouldn't work.
Oh yeah, please don't.
Hi, Alicia. I haven't added. Oh, you're asking Sara. Yes, Alicia? Well, just.
I mean, I can speak to it for me. So we haven't, but there are a few events we're going to be doing soon where the event host has talked about adding dancers with us. So it would be, you know, dancers that are also already in an organization. We would combine with them as well. And I think that would be wonderful. It's another great thing that lends very well to this project.
Thanks for that question, Alicia. Anybody else with a question? Hi, Jenna. Didn't get to say hi. And Nomi came on a little bit after we started. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining. And maybe we'll do something again, Sara, with the video. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you, and I appreciate everyone who joined. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.
Take care.